Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dr. Ingrid Vasiliu, Chief Quality and Innovation Officer at Madnet. Please come on up, Doctor. Did I recruit? Here she is.
Thank you. I actually represent the Tech Genomics today for this event. No problem. Thank you. So what we'll do, we'll spend the next few minutes talking about global trends, emerging technologies, some opportunities and challenges we have in healthcare, digital ethics, and if you allow me, in the last segment, I'll share some of my insights about what the future can bring and what the new frontiers in healthcare are at this time. When we look at the global healthcare market, the growth has been impressive and the amount of investments has been steadily increasing. When you look at the digital healthcare market and healthcare analytics market, as well as the healthcare services market, we have seen a constant increase over the last 2 years, and it's expected to grow over the next 5 years. From a digital and virtual healthcare perspective, all experts agree that they're the drivers of the kind of investments that you have seen and the growth we have experienced. And why? We believe that increased access, increased adoption, and unfortunately the pandemic was a necessary catalyst for some of the industry leaders to understand that digital health and virtual health are here to stay. So sadly, we needed an event like this to make everybody realize that we're not going to consider digital health or virtual health as just nice to have, and they're going to become mainstay and state-of-the-art for every practice. Additionally, I think we have also noticed an increased emergence of novel technologies that are currently being used in healthcare. Almost every week, we are witnessing new companies adopting these emerging technologies to improve patient care, to develop new treatment pathways, to develop new mechanisms of diagnosis, and to reshape, redesign, and recalibrate our healthcare delivery model. Some of those, you see them listed, and I will mention them again towards the second part of the presentation, but specifically AI, next-generation sequencing, AR, VR, XR are currently impressing some of the novel specialties that we've not seen over the last few years, and we've seen a lot of startups also pushing very much in adopting some of the other emerging technologies. Brain-computer interfaces, although most of you have heard about them in the social media, but I would like to highlight that there are many universities doing excellent work in this domain with applications for neurology and chronic trauma. That is fascinating. So I urge you to please take a look, because just recently we had an FDA product approved for brain-computer interface and treatment of stroke. What are some of the hybrid technologies that we've also seen adopted in healthcare? I think that's another important element I would like to emphasize during the presentation today, that we see a high convergence of emerging technologies in almost every discipline. That used to not be the case several years ago. When we take a look at other countries as well, and in the US, we see 5G almost in every application, IoT, cloud computing and edge computing, DNA computing, and there are increased efforts to even embed quantum computing in life sciences and healthcare. The domains that are important to mention, some of them are highly relevant given that we're just emerging this pandemic, but the development of new vaccines, new medications, new medical devices, new treatment pathways is astounding, and every single one can benefit from the emerging technologies that I just referenced. Here are some examples that when you do a search globally, most countries are mentioning that they're at the top of their agenda when they try to redesign their healthcare and life sciences models. Specifically, virtual clinical trials, gene therapies, 3D printed organs, bioimplants are being currently deployed and are making the transition from the innovation lab to daily healthcare. I would also like to mention that there are several universities that have published results in clinical trials for exoskeletons in trauma patients. Specifically in Switzerland recently, they were able to do groundbreaking work. So again, if you're interested in that topic, I encourage you to read on it. It's fascinating what we see on a weekly or monthly basis. When we think about the patient care 360 life cycle, it is important to mention that the emerging technologies now are affecting every single domain within this 360 spectrum. Not only diagnosis, prevention, but also treatment of acute and managing chronic diseases. And definitely, I think we are all happy to see that there's an increased emphasis on wellness. And some of the experts globally are working very heavily on also changing the paradigm and not considering aging a disease and focusing on longevity as the same way like we do on preventing disease. What are some of the challenges? Until now, we talked only about the beautiful emerging technologies and what's happening from a positive perspective. But I think we all know we have major hurdles and major challenges in healthcare, and some of those are listed. The ones that I deal with on a daily basis are ethics. I'm a big digital ethics advocate, and I work pretty hard on the not-for-profit arena as well to encourage everybody to deploy emerging technologies in a mindful way and have proactive digital ethics programs. Additionally, I don't have to mention to anybody that's working in healthcare how the regulatory burdens affect us all. They're massive, and I don't expect them to get easier to overcome. I think the only way I see a path forward there is if we globally collaborate with multiple stakeholders and find frameworks that work for all. It is a tough task, though, definitely. Cost and interoperability come right next. I would say even if we had unlimited money, which we don't have, but interoperability remains, again, a hurdle that only with collaboration we can overcome. Other opportunities, in addition to the increased interoperability that we can achieve, are, of course, design thinking and self-sovereignty. These are very near and dear to my heart, and the reason why I like to mention them is specifically because I focus very much on emerging technologies. I would like us not to forget that it's essential that when we deploy these, we have a human-centric approach. We want to definitely learn from lessons past when we deployed electronic healthcare records and forgot that they're designed for patients or for clinicians, and unfortunately, the way we let it happen did not turn out too well. I have not heard many people being super happy about how electronic healthcare records were deployed, and there are many challenges we still are trying to solve. So hopefully with these other emerging technologies, we can apply those lessons learned and become proactive from the beginning to have that human-centric and patient-centric approach. And the self-sovereignty aspect, I, again, spend a lot of time in international forums advocating for patients being able to own their data, and that has to come with appropriate education and advocacy, because if you just allow patients to own their data and they don't understand the negative consequences that can occur if they don't know how to safeguard it, then we have, again, another set of problems. But I think what I see in many of the startups and the novel trends is encouraging. There are many companies that dedicate themselves to increase the opportunities for patients to have this self-sovereignty for data, and that applies to all healthcare data. As I mentioned at the beginning, I spent my daytime job in precision medicine, and genomics, as you can imagine, is a data realm that is very important to safeguard. So many patients care deeply about owning their genome and making sure that it's not being used for inappropriate purposes. And I referenced design thinking just again, when we talk about a human-centric approach, we want to take care of all domains, and that includes data access, disease prevention, disease treatment, wellness, and longevity. Here are just some examples so that you have at least a few to think about and maybe spend some time researching them further. But definitely AI and genomics is a domain that has been quite often referenced in many publications, and specifically public health, like we've seen even in the pandemic. The combination of genomic research and augmented intelligence has yielded, actually for the first time, the vaccines we're enjoying right now, and why we can even be in this room together. So I would love to continue to see this kind of effort over the next few years. Same way, if you look at the longevity and wellness research, genomic data is essential in that body of work, and we're making tremendous progress What was not even possible 2-3 years ago is currently being achieved in less than an hour with advanced genomic sequencing. And more, we are able to infuse other specialties with the insights learned from those advanced technologies. Of course, congenital disease reduction is something that we've been striving for many years, and now it has become reality, particularly with CRISPR. If you looked at also the Nobel Prize winners this year, they were acknowledged for the tremendous work done in this domain. Bioimplants are making a huge splash at this time in healthcare. And I think, again, the combination of bioimplants, AI, and nanotechnology can really completely recalibrate the way we think about medicine. I've seen very nice work in endocrinology and maternal care. The combination of nanotechnology and AI is again, something that has been increasing in frequency, specifically when you look at neurosciences, mental health, endocrinology. I urge you to take a look at some of the medications that have chips in them embedded and can do targeted therapy, can measure pharmacokinetics, can monitor compliance, can monitor toxicity. So the opportunities are endless when we look at these technologies and how you can combine them. Wearables, I had an opportunity to also talk about wearables in education, but in healthcare even more. I think that's probably the one domain that we have seen the highest adoption, and it's in legacy organizations as well as in the startup domain that we notice increased adoption, increased integration, and increased data generation from wearables. As mentioned before, unfortunately, we have to make sure that we have appropriate data governance, because I think right now we have too many wearables that are generating massive sets of data that no one is standardizing, no one is validating, and I'm worried a little bit about some of the insights that will be generated in those. The same way we talked about next generation sequencing, I wanted to highlight the opportunities we have when we combine augmented intelligence and quantum computing. It's not in the daily healthcare realm yet, but a lot of countries are investing heavily in research and development as well as science institutes. Just to give an example, India recently created 21 institutes dedicated only to quantum computing. Also, the United States government, if you look, just recently approved massive amounts of dollars in the billions of range to dedicate only towards quantum research. And some institutes are also combined research in AI and quantum. Australia, Canada, Germany, Switzerland are taking the lead, but there are other countries that are closely following suit. So I think we're seeing a trend for the next 5 to 10 years where it is possible to see that quantum computing might actually start to help our research and development in life sciences and healthcare on a daily basis. The one that's near and dear to my heart and that I used to speak even several years ago when no one wanted to listen, but now it's actually common practice, is to combine blockchain technology and AI. Specifically for precision medicine, it is essential, and it can really, again, change the way we think about healthcare, the way we diagnose disease, the way we treat disease, and hopefully the way we can prevent disease. And that includes pandemics. I remember 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I had a talk, the same talk, how to use AI and blockchain to prevent a pandemic. And it was always Friday at 5 p.m. in the last room at any conference. No one cared about it. And do you think last year someone cared about it? I was invited to talk about it almost every week, 3 times per day. And I think we need to learn from that lesson that the same way sometimes today when I talk about quantum, people think, who cares about quantum? It's not something I do every day. But trust me, in a few years, we're going to have the same type of event like we had a few years ago with AI and blockchain, where no one understood yet how it can actually help. So for some of you that are not as familiar with blockchain technology, I really encourage you to take a look, because it can be extremely helpful, combined with the power of multiple AI tools that we have currently, not only in virtual clinical trials, but also in provider credentialing, patient records, and like we already referenced several times in precision medicine, developing novel, personalized treatment plans for patients is essential. The best practice pathway that we've accomplished for many years is great, but it's not sufficient. And we've seen that if we do design novel methods based on unique genomic insights, you can really achieve things that we never thought were possible. And last but not least, as I referenced briefly, the combination of quantum, AI, edge computing, and DNA computing can also generate completely new insights that currently, with the tools we have available, are not possible. So multiple simultaneous simulations and the computational power that we have with these next generation computing techniques will help us to develop novel medications, identify disease 20, 30, 40 years before. Just recently, we had several breakthroughs for Alzheimer's where even just graphic analysis or voice analysis or gait analysis can identify that disease will ensue 15, 20 years before. Imagine how that can help us in treating Alzheimer's. As you saw yesterday, we had a new medication approved, but that's just very late in the stage of the disease. And we're very glad that we have a treatment. But ideally, we would love to prevent Alzheimer's in the first place if possible. And the same, we can give examples in many other diseases. The more controversial one that, again, probably you heard a lot about from Elon Musk is the combination of AI with brain-computer interfaces. But as I referenced briefly during the introduction, there are numerous universities that are doing excellent research in neurology and specifically helping patients with chronic either head trauma or spine trauma. And it's tremendous what they've been able to accomplish. Even the United States FDA approved recently the stroke product. But again, making sure that we don't just follow social media, and I'm encouraging all of you to look at the research publications because there is excellent work done and opportunities we have not only in neurology, but also in other domains. It is crucial to understand how to deploy brain-computer interfaces for these chronic diseases and hopefully also how to help us with aging. So in closing, I just wanted to spend a few minutes, 2 slides, on what I think could be some of the solutions when we think about redefining, redesigning, and disrupting healthcare models. One, I already referenced several times, which is precision medicine. I also believe personalized medicine, which is a little different than precision medicine, is essential, and we've seen it even now during the pandemic. I think people realized that you cannot just have one treatment for all like we always knew, but now it has become a little bit more acutely relevant. So I think both precision medicine and personalized medicine will be here to stay and will become more prominent as the years progress. Also, augmented medicine and exponential medicine are 2 terms that I like to sometimes reference, particularly with the emerging technologies. It's essential to clarify for those that are maybe skeptical or mistrusting. When we say artificial intelligence, we do not want that to displace clinical work. And we do not want that to be a threat to clinicians. No, it should augment what clinical expertise we have. And there are many ways to do that. One of my colleagues used to joke all the time when I gave talks about AI, if the AI is going to run up and down the hallways in the hospital to intubate patients. And my answer was no. The AI algorithm is not going to run up and down, but it's going to tell you to which floor to run faster so that you intubate the patient that is the highest risk. So definitely we have huge opportunities, and when you look at all the amazing work that's being done with augmented intelligence in all specialties currently, but particularly I would say cardiology has been at the forefront. We have now algorithms that can diagnose with 99 pretty high percent accuracy many of the diagnoses. And so it allows clinicians to focus only on the highest risk diseases. As I briefly mentioned before, I don't want us to forget about digital ethics, particularly in healthcare. Very often, almost on a weekly basis, I'm being consulted for digital ethics, and I can't tell you how many problems I can see that are very difficult to fix when you think about it too late. It's essential to start a digital ethics program a year or 2 before you even deploy emerging technologies, and very few healthcare C-suites are willing, able, and determined to do that. It's very difficult once you already deploy the technology the wrong way to start to have to look at data governance and digital ethics and start to change everything once it's been deployed the wrong way. So much better to start proactively, and then you can have a sustainable model that will prevent you from future disasters. As you've seen, there are several publications recently that have shown how data breaches occurred and several other ethical violations of patient data. So it's really important in healthcare in particular to not fall in that trap. Last but not least, my hope is that over the next few years, we can have a global precision medicine data exchange. We have done it successfully now during the pandemic, where all stakeholders collaborated, worked together, shared relevant data without jeopardizing their IP rights so that we can develop novel vaccines and make the tools available to everybody in the world that needs them to prevent this pandemic and to hopefully prevent future pandemics. And then, as we mentioned, IoT and Internet of Medicine is a term that more and more experts start to mention very frequently. The same way we have the Internet of Everything, well, we're also going to have the Internet of Medicine because massive data is being generated and stored in the cloud, and that can be analyzed. So at one point, someone will focus heavily on that and will start to have a segregated Internet domain. Digital health twins are a passion of mine. I had the fortune recently to just be named even the top 20 global healthcare leaders in digital twins, so that's something very near and dear to my heart. If you don't know about it, I'm happy to talk with you offline. It's something that can help patient safety. It's something that can help us develop novel treatments much faster than we currently have in our normal research and development pathways. And additionally, I think it's a great way also to help safeguard patient information, the same way like we referenced before. And more on the futuristic side, but it's being done successfully in several countries already. Smart health cities, such as the one we have in Japan and in Saudi Arabia, and smart health wallets are being developed by startups across the world. And I hope that we can have more and more incorporation of these kind of concepts in the United States as well. Thank you so much. That concludes my presentation. Sure. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain a few. I think we have a few minutes. Yes.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I run a startup based out of Toronto. So, the infrastructure is a little bit different than the States. But one thing I notice here is you guys have a ton of silos. You really love your silos.
No, we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about interoperability, and even the last thing you mentioned with smart health wallets, can you talk about a little bit kind of what are the roadblocks that are in place that you're seeing? Because, as a startup that is trying to solve some of these problems, it's not easy. So yeah, just want to know what you think.
Great question. I want to emphasize, we do not love the silos, but there are plenty. Yes, it's a nightmare. And I think I was talking with a few colleagues just recently. The only way I think to overcome the interoperability challenges is when we have large-scale adoption and some of the new entrants into the market, as you've seen recently. JP Morgan created their new healthcare company, Facebook, Amazon, Best Buy, Walmart. So I think once we have those kind of healthcare entrants that are usually having large denominators, we will see those interoperability challenges being solved, because just typical healthcare organizations and legacy organizations will not be able to solve it. I think we also have seen 2-3 health plans lately making huge strides to solve that interoperability challenge. So to your point, hurdles we have plenty: regulatory, legal, and the desire to monopolize some of these domains. But definitely, if I had to focus on healthcare wallets, I would say that the ticket to that is through the health plans, because they have the power to change it, and very quickly. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, we should definitely talk afterwards. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Yes.
What country do you think is doing a great job in integrating AI, quantum, and blockchain data? Us in America are kind of always, we're a leading country, but we're always behind in innovation.
Yeah. Well, just recently, Japan and South Korea have done a great job. I can't mention companies, but there are also 2 companies that have done amazing work for smart operating rooms. They're in Europe. I'll give you a hint, and I can again talk offline. But definitely as a country, Japan has almost all their operating rooms virtual. They're doing all medical education virtual, and they recently launched a smart health city that's a pleasure to watch. So I think if you're interested in that, then NEOM is a concept done in Saudi Arabia. It does not involve only healthcare, but also other domains. But again, if I would set the bar high, that's something we can look at and learn from.
Yeah, because I'm even considering doing a year or two overseas just to kind of have an aspiring futurist in healthcare.
Then I would pick Japan. If you want to learn fast and well, I would go to Japan because it's also very organized. In the other countries, it's still a little bit just pilot stage and in certain cities, versus Japan has adopted it quite large scale.
Thank you. I'll talk to you after.
Welcome. Any other questions? Great. I think that's it. But please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn and pretty much any other social media, and we can talk. Thank you.